Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Mayflower United Church of Christ, where no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. Tonight's service works to revise the conventional emphasis of Holy Week's observances on Good Friday, moving away from anti-Semitism and bloodthirsty Middle Eastern rulers demanding blood sacrifice for original sin. This, however, is not new. Even in the 12th century, Peter Abelard wrote, "Christ died neither because a ransom had to be paid to the devil, nor because the blood of an innocent victim was needed to appease the wrath of God, but that a supreme exhibition of love may kindle a correspondence love in the heart of man, and inspire them with the true freedom of the sonship of God." Peter Abelard was a French philosopher and theologian who lived from 1079 to 1142. So if you're looking forward to being told that you're a horrible worm, unworthy of living, and that you deserve a horrible death, that Jesus suffered in your place on Good Friday, you're going to be disappointed. Instead, we're going to consider the possible thoughts entertained by a number of observants of the Passion, and we see how we can relate to them in our everyday lives. To prepare us for this service, we will take some time for some centering silence.
Blessed may we be. The unison prayer found in your bulletin is responsive. You'll notice that it starts out with all of us, and then we'll go to the women, and then to the men, and then back to all of us. Please follow along. We gather as those who sense abundant grace in the abundance of our lives, but who remain plagued by the reality of want and injustice in our world. We gather today to bear witness to suffering and death upon a cross. We are appalled at the injustice and cruelty of such humanity, not only in Jesus' story, but of days in our lives when we are confronted with greed, corruption, discrimination, hatred, violence, and loss of life.
We mourn the Palestinians and Iranians who have been bombed, for refugees of all countries who are fleeing oppression, and for poverty and sickness that are far too pervasive in our world.
May we recommit ourselves to seeking peace, justice, mercy, forgiveness, kindness, and love respond to our world more wisely and compassionately.
May this day of darkness not hinder our resolve to follow in Jesus' ways and to make our world a better place. In the midst of delicious suffering and callousness of crucifixion, let us hold on to hope in resurrection. This is our prayer.
Join with me in singing to the tune of Amazing Grace as printed in our bulletins.
God dwells in us where we love, with God made all as one. For when we love, we dwell in God. Renewal has begun. In loving others I receive fulfillment and release from tension and hostility. I taste of sacred peace.
These readings are a glimpse into what's called the Passion, the story of Jesus' betrayal and death. Come and walk with the people that were with him during that time.
I'm Judas, from the village of Coria. I love the land that God had given to my people, and I believe that Jesus of Nazareth was God's answer to Israel's prayer for release from Roman tyranny. Surely he was the Messiah, foretold by our prophets. I just knew he'd be an invincible leader against the oppression of Rome. But I became impatient with him to demonstrate his leadership by marshaling Israel's warriors in battle. But he seemed more interested in being present to needy peasants and blind beggars. It was maddening for me to listen to him talk about loving one's enemies, when what I wanted to hear was to knock up some heads. Why did he waste time with those lepers and children?
I'm a Roman soldier. Our cohort was pretty typical, a fierce and cruel band of men. Actually, most of those stinking peasants we have to keep around think of us as murderers. But we don't care. It's our job. And we're good at it. We're paid for obeying orders, whatever they are. That night, though, was special. We were out to nab this Jewish rabble-rouser, Jesus. We got a tip as to where he was, and we came armed to the teeth. We came to capture a dangerous revolutionary.
I was there that night. My name is Peter, and we, the disciples, were in the garden with Jesus while he was praying. It's hard to express the level of fear and hatred that came over me when I saw those soldiers. I loved Jesus so much that I had to do something. I had to show my loyalty and my devotion. So I raised my sword. I meant to do so much more, but all I managed to do was cut off the ear of one of the soldiers. I was desperate to protect Jesus, but resorted to exactly the kind of thing Jesus warned us against. Jesus doesn't condone violence, and there, facing what was sure to be unimaginable cruelty, Jesus reached out and healed the soldier, one of his enemies.
I began to wonder if Jesus needed an opportunity to demonstrate his divine power. Perhaps I could arrange an opportunity that would force his hand. I conceived a plan that would give Jesus a chance to demonstrate his superiority over Caesar. And I offered to lead a squad of soldiers to the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus would have no choice. He would summon his legion of angels and disable Caesar's soldiers. But everything fell apart right before my eyes. It was inconceivable that Jesus would allow himself to be taken as a prisoner. But he did. I was sickened by the realization that I had betrayed God's Son to his enemies. And I was desperate, and I couldn't undo what I had started. But I had betrayed the Messiah. And I was desperate. I couldn't undo what I had started, and I had betrayed Jesus. And I felt that I didn't deserve to live. What else could I do?
This Jesus surrendered with a courage like I'd never seen. There was something about him that I couldn't understand. He carried no weapon, but when he came toward us, we became terrified. A troop of armed Roman soldiers, paralyzed with fear. I was embarrassed, but what else could I do?
After Jesus was arrested that night, he was given 6 trials, all without witnesses and all at night. They were brutal and cruel to him. Long before he even went to the cross, Jesus was humiliated and beaten. He was all alone. His disciples were nowhere to be found.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what was happening. I promised Jesus that I wouldn't deny him. But that night, I denied him 3 times. I bitterly wept because of it, and I was deeply sorry. But we, all of us were so scared. We fled and didn't know what to do. We were in constant fear.
I am the chief priest of the Jews, a man of prestige and political influence. I know the rules, and until quite recently, I've kept the rules. After all, God, we believed, made the rules. But then this Jesus of Nazareth came into my life, and I abruptly started to break our rules. It made me so angry and jealous. I wanted to get rid of him. He claimed to heal people. He helped people. But he said he was the Son of Man, the one by whom we would all be judged. And and his popularity kept growing. Despite our efforts to discredit him, he never defended himself or tried to get revenge. Instead, he demanded honesty in his relationships with us, and honesty was not what I was really interested in. But that voice pierced my heart. Perhaps I knew deep down that he was one called by God, but I didn't want to admit it. What else could I have done?
I am Pontius Pilate. Personally, I had nothing against Jesus, although he was known as a troublemaker among his own people. Certainly, as a Roman ruler, I didn't care whether he lived or died. And he, as his straggly band of disciples, posed no military threat to Roman power. I was curious to hear him, though. He seemed to have a depth and a spiritual power about him. I must admit, I came to think of him as a person of truth. I wondered, why should he die because of the qualms of others? I felt reluctant to let him be crucified, but I'm not sure why. There was something unusual about him, but I had my job to consider.
Pontius Pilate is my husband, a very powerful and influential man, and I am, therefore, a very important woman. Some have also called me beautiful. Wouldn't you agree? Something happened to me, though, that scared me to the inner depths of my being. God spoke to me about Jesus in a dream at night. And from then on, I tried to warn my husband about Jesus. Besides that, something about his eyes bothered me. They were the kind of eyes that see right through you. I wanted my husband to leave him alone and release him. I didn't feel he was someone we should be dealing with. And I told my husband the same. But what else could I do?
My wife was acting strangely. She didn't become upset often, but when it came to this Jesus character, she pleaded with me. Mind you, I was bothered by Jesus too, what was left of him. By the time he got to me, he was beaten so severely that it was hard to recognize him. I was conflicted, knowing that if I didn't have him crucified, I could lose my job. Losing face and being embarrassed in front of the people was unacceptable. What really bothered me was that this Jesus actually seemed to care about me. He seemed to care more about others than himself. Who does that? I didn't want to admit it, but I didn't want his death to be my responsibility. But neither did I want to be one who saved the life of any of these religious fanatics. So, in front of the angry, screaming, and shouting mob, I washed my hands of the situation. What else could I do?
My name is Simon. You probably don't know me, And I didn't really understand what the situation was. I was just a bystander in the crowd when I was pressed into service, carrying the cross of this Jesus to Golgotha. Who is he anyway? I was near to him, even though he was about to face a torturous death. There was a strange peacefulness about him. I didn't have anything against him. And carrying that cross he may have relieved some of his suffering. Look, I did all that I could. What else could I have done?
I loved my son from the moment he was born. Let's just say he wasn't an easy child to raise, but I loved him. We had our differences, certainly, but from the very beginning of his organizing people, this was my greatest fear. Why did he have to be so different? He could have been like his brothers, lived in Galilee, had a family, but he wanted everyone to be treated fairly. Does it make sense to say that I think he just cared too much? He loved too much. I must admit, I am proud of him, and I wanted him to know I was proud of him, that I loved him. That's why I was there, to be with him one last time. It was harder than I could ever have imagined. I felt every wound he received. I would have done anything to have taken his place.
I'm Mary Magdalene. I was proud to be one of Jesus' disciples. It's a rare thing for a man in our world to treat a woman with such equality and respect. I came to know Jesus when he healed me, but I discovered later he had healed more. He had healed the deepest part of who I was. It was a strange day for me when I realized how much I had come to love him. I did what I could do with my financial and moral support, but it wasn't enough. I know now that every moment I spent with him was a gift. Clearly, this man spoke the truth. He made me realize that I had lived my life in fear instead of love. And where there is love, there is no room for fear. Maybe that's why I had the courage to be at his feet when they executed him.
My name is Joseph of Arimathea. Look, I'm not trying to brag, but I'm considered a pretty big deal. Even without my membership in the Sanhedrin, I'm a wealthy and powerful man. I'm not a terribly brave person, though. I had to gather up every ounce of courage after Jesus was executed to ask for his body. Sometimes the bodies are just left to be eaten by the birds and dogs. It's terrible. I have a large family too and thought Jesus should be buried with some dignity. Nevertheless, I was so frightened. If someone had found out, I'd lose my reputation and position. I'm a wealthy man and have much to lose, and this was a big risk, but somehow I knew that such a holy man who spoke so eloquently on God's behalf should not be thrown into a pit. He changed my life. He taught me the truth. Opening my family tomb was an expression of gratitude for how much he had changed my life. After all, that's the way love is. It transforms people to do things for love of truth rather than from fear. What else could I do?
centurion, part of the Roman squad assigned to Golgotha that day, and I saw Jesus die. I was just doing my job. I saw so many people die, more crucifixions than I could count, but you get used to it. Besides, it's what we do. But this Jesus, this ragged bag of bones, he changed me. There was something about the way he died. Call it an inner peace or something. In spite of the pain, there was something about him. He even had the audacity to forgive the detachment carrying out his execution. Who does that? I think he was special somehow. I wish I had known more about him. I still feel bad about participating in his death. What else could I have done?
What can I say? How can I ever make this up to him? He must know that I loved him with all my heart. What more could I have done? Am I willing to risk my life for his truth? Can I still call him my rabbi? Will I be able to face the others after being such a coward? What he taught us was hard enough to live out when he was right here with us. Now I have to figure out a way to live it by my ways. I owe him that much. Though he would say, I owe myself and God and others a life well lived, in and for love. What else can I do?
I know I've been given a gift of love so great that I would gladly give my life for the sake of my child. Maybe there are things that I could have done differently, but I couldn't have loved him more.
I'll always wonder if there was more that I could have done. But then none of the 12 even showed their faces when he was killed. Sad how those bumpkins who bussied himself, arguing about who would be first in the kingdom, were absent that day. Cowering, some were saved during Jesus' last hours. I hope he knew when he looked at me how much I loved him. I will never leave him. I will never betray his truth. His virtues are my virtues. I will share them with everyone I meet. Maybe that is what love is. You are invited to come forward to this cross. You will find 2 hammers and nails here at the foot of the cross, and you are invited to pound a nail into the cross. There are some holes that have already been nails been hammered into before. If that's easier, you can stick them in one of the holes. Otherwise, you can make a new one. characters of this story are vastly different from one another. Clearly, when they ask, "What else could I have done?" they don't all mean the same thing. Roman soldier full of regret. Perhaps Pilate seemed a little defensive. Simon of Cyrene, thoughtful, trying to literally think of something else he could have done. Angry, heartbroken. Where are they coming from when they ask, "What else could I have done?" I invite you to turn to your neighbor or to speak out loud an impression of one of the characters and the impression that they left on you. And if you don't know each other, introduce yourself. With that same person that you're talking with right now, share which character you most related to and why. I'm going to get you to share what you've talked about.
Sure. I identify the most with Joseph of Arimathea because of the sacrifice he did, because it could have obliterated his life completely in his position. And he was kind and let Jesus have his tomb and be a part of it, and thus be a part of his family.
I identify mostly with my wife's character, Pilate, as the strength, the backbone, the everything that it takes to truly follow Jesus is something that I struggle with a lot in my life, and I can identify with a little bit with that. It felt like I could identify a little bit with some of the things that Pilate
Mother Mary, that all that is happening in that time, and she kept loving her kids, concerned about the children. It is about motherhood, so I think I relate to that very.
I also related with Mary because as a mother, having to watch in anguish the way he was beaten and ridiculed, and to see that and at the cross to see how he suffered, and there wasn't anything that she could do for him. And as a mother, I think about that and I just can't imagine that she did that.
So several of us mentioned that by playing the characters, we related better to the characters than we had. And so that's, I think, something we don't often get inside the heads of the characters themselves. We read the stories without putting ourselves in their place. So putting ourselves in those places helps us to identify more with each character. But Mary Magdalene was my favorite because she was courageous to the end, and while the men had gone away, she was the one who was still there with his mother, which you would kind of expect, his mother, but Mary Magdalene, and then she was also the first to the tomb as well. So.
Actually, I identify most with the opposite of the chief priest, because I've been gone for almost 20 years, and yet I found myself trying to step in and tell people how things should be done and what should be done, and I don't need to do that.
I think all of these characters have to take some risk to be associated with him. And they all seem to have, in the face of injustice, they seem to express some regret that they didn't do enough. That really speaks to me. I do see injustice happening, and I ask myself, do I do enough? And my answer would probably be with everyone here, I don't.
I felt connected to Pilate the most because Pilate was having an incredibly difficult decision, obviously was very uncomfortable with everything that was going on, and the biggest thing for him was he wanted to make sure that it wasn't his fault, it was going to fall on to somebody else. So like, how would we react in a situation like that? Because obviously you don't want it to be your fault, but he didn't know, like, he wasn't willing to do what it took to stop it. Like, what would we do in that situation? That's a big question to ponder.
I identified with Mary Magdalene, who even though it was righteous anger, pointed fingers at others in the midst of her grief. And I think I do that often. I recognize that in myself, that when I feel unjustly treated or when I am in pain and grieving, I point to other people's faults.
With God we are as one. When love is that which guides our path, the victory's been done.
Now, may we go in silence with peace and hope. For nothing can separate us from the source of life and love. We are at Easter.